everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we're going to make an orange chicken with some fried rice, and we're going to bake up some Aunt Aggie's cookies. So let's start. I've got 3 chicken breasts here, which I'm going to fillet in half and then cut up into some bite-sized pieces, which then we will give a nice cornstarch and flour coating on them. So they'll get that nice crispy edge on them when we fry them up. So we're going to first fillet them all in half. That way we're not getting any really thick pieces of chicken. So they'll just cook up nicely. There we go. And perfect. And then again, I'm going to just kind of cut these into nice little bite-sized pieces of chicken that we can coat up, knowing that when we coat them with our egg and our flour and cornstarch mixture, they're gonna, double in size essentially. So you don't want to make your chicken bites too big, or by the time you've got them coated and then like fried up, they'll be really big. Here we go. And I'm using chicken breast. You could also use boneless, skinless chicken thighs as well. It will be a slightly more tender of a meat because chicken thighs are a bit more tender. They've got a bit more fat in them. But either one would really work well with this. Okay. Let's get these down. That way we can start coating them. And then we're going to make just a really simple basic fried rice today with some onions, green onions, carrots, and lots of eggs because my kids love fried rice that is filled with too many eggs, way more than they normally put. They want like egg in every bite.
You have a question. Do you have any of your recipes posted anywhere?
I do have recipe cards posted for our members. So I send out about 3 to 4 every single week for our members. But we do upload all of our lives to the link on our page so people can always recreate recipes from just rewatching videos as well. And tomorrow, hopefully, we'll have our next round of recipe cards going out for our members. And I always try to send out recipe cards from recipes we've cooked during the last week so that they're fresh in everyone's mind if they've seen the lives. Okay, let's get these guys. And again, I'm just cutting them into nice, small, bite-sized pieces. Again, nothing too big or too thick. That way they'll all fry up at roughly the same time, and they'll be easier to eat. Okay. So let's get these guys chopped. And then once we get there, we're going to make our egg. We'll mix our eggs together, kind of whip that up, and then we're going to mix some flour and cornstarch together because that's what we're going to be using to coat our chicken. That mixture of both cornstarch and flour gives it that almost like tempura texture when you're frying it up, but that just how the Asian fried chicken, like their sweet, like orange chicken, sesame chicken, all has that just lovely kind of battered type mixture on it, which is different than like a hand breaded or a battered chicken. Okay, that should look pretty good. Just making sure I don't have any too big of ones. I'm going to go wash my hands real quick so we can start working on our next mixture. Go. And then I'm going to grab a fork here so that I can whip up those eggs. I'm going to use 3 eggs for this because I don't need a huge amount of egg for our mixture, but just enough to kind of coat each of our pieces of chicken up before we dip them into our cornstarch and flour mixture. I'm going to pop each yolk, and we'll give this a good whisk. Here we go. And then we'll add about, I want to say 1.5 cups of flour with 3/4 cup of cornstarch. And that will be our crumb, our base for our breading.
You have a question? Why the cornstarch?
The cornstarch gives that a lighter but crispier crunch to our frying up our like the chicken. It gives it more of that tempura texture versus if you use all flour, that's a denser one. So it's not quite as light. So we're going to do a cup and a half of flour. And the cornstarch, after we fry it, it's going to leave a little bit of residual in the oil, which then we will make our sauce from, which will also help kind of bind it up. And then we're going to do about 3/4 a cup of cornstarch. And I'm just going to eyeball this. There we go. And let me grab another fork since my egg fork is nice and wet. And we're going to just mix these flour and the cornstarch together. Just kind of toss it. There we go. I just want to make sure it gets as mixed up as possible. Okay. Perfect. Now, before we start doing our dredging and everything, let's get our oil heated up so that we'll be ready to dip it in and fry it. Now, you don't need to have your chicken completely submerged in the oil. We will flip it halfway through. So just making sure you have a good thin layer on the bottom of your pan is great. I've used probably about a cup. Now we're not going to use quite all of that, but you do need to have a good base. And you can use a smaller pan, which means you need to use less. But since I'm frying up a good amount, we're going to use a little bit more. Okay, now normally when I do my dredging in there, I will go into the mixture, dry mixture, then into the egg and this. But for this, I'm going to go into the egg and then into my cornstarch mixture. So a little bit different for this. So I'm just going to take kind of a handful at a time and just try to keep this hand clean. We'll do this. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple of these pieces. We're going to toss them in here, coat them up. And I'm just going to leave them in there until we're ready to fry. That way they don't, I don't want them to get pasty. I want them to stay nice and dry and coated in this mixture so that they are crunchier. If they kind of get more pasty because they've sat with that liquid, they're not as crispy. So we're going to leave them in there. That way they're going to keep a lot of that crunch on there. So we'll go back with our next batch into the egg. And I'm going to just kind of coat it up here and make sure every piece gets kind of touched with our egg mixture. And then we'll add pieces in here and we're going to coat them up before we add more in there. And this again is going to give us a nice light crispy fry on our chicken here, which we will then coat with a lovely orange sauce. And I'm actually going to be using blood oranges and some clementines to make my orange sauce here because I rarely ever have just regular oranges on hand, but the same citrus flavor is going to be there. I'm actually really excited for the blood oranges because I think it's going to give it a really cool color, but still tastes very similar to a regular orange chicken. Got to make it fun.
Do you have a question? Can you go over what the mixture is?
Yes. So the mixture here, we have 3/4 a cup of cornstarch with 1.5 cups of flour. So we just have a nice, simple kind of flour mixture. I didn't put any seasoning in it because we're going to be making a sauce that coats it. And so you don't really need to add any extra spices because that sauce is going to have all of that flavor in it. Let's get these here, and then we're going to add this last bit in, and then we'll check our oil. I have my oil heating up on high right now, but when we go to fry it, I'm going to turn it down to a medium because I don't want to fry it too high of a temperature so that because that will happen is you'll end up cooking the outside faster than the inside gets cooked. But since these pieces of chicken are fairly small, they are going to cook up pretty much quicker than when I'm doing a big old fillet. Go. Just add our chicken. in bit by bit, toss them because, again, I want to make sure they all get kind of coated up in our cornstarch and flour mixture. There we go. And there's really, doing it with your hands is pretty much the best way. You just can't coat them as well with tongs or a spoon. So just getting in there, and then we'll give our hands a really good scrub afterwards. But again, I'm going to come in here and just toss these guys up. And just make sure that I don't have any stuck together. And you can see how just leaving them in there keeps them nice and powdery, which will give us a nice crisp edge on it. If they get too soggy, then you're not going to get quite a crispy of an edge. Here we go. And you can see, this is why I like to keep one hand clean so that I have something to manipulate other things with. Okay, this is looking pretty good. So I'm going to just toss it right there. And then we're going to go give my hands a quick thing. But I'm going to first, before I wash and scrub it, I'm going to test the temperature, because if it's nice and hot, we see we've got a pretty good sizzle right there. I'm going to throw my first batch in with my hands before getting tongs, but I'm going to turn it down to a medium, so right around a 4 to 5-ish, and I'm going to drop these in. But I want to make sure that I'm not crowding my chicken as I drop it in. Do your chicken in batches. Don't just dump it all in at one time, or you're not going to get as crispy of a fry on it. But we'll do this first batch with my hands, and then I'll get tongs to do the remaining ones. This is just going, it's a little bit easier right now. And again, we're going to do these in batches until we've kind of cooked them all through. As long as they're not resting on top of each other, it's okay if like an edge is touching another edge. But here we go. I think we'll get one more in, or a few more in here, and then we're going to go wash our hands. Or I'm going to go wash my hands. Let's get a few more in here. And we've got our first batch kind of frying up here. So let me decoat my hands, which is, again, why it's nice to leave one hand fairly clean, so that you can get a little work done. There we go. Good as new. Okay. Now have it over medium heat. Again, don't cook it too high, or you're going to end up burning your chicken and while leaving it raw on the inside. Okay, let's get to start making getting our onions caramelizing for our fried rice, and then we're going to cut up our dough for our Aunt Aggie's cookies. So let's get our onion here. I've got one small yellow onion here. It looks like this was actually kind of 2 onions here. Let's get this second layer. Looks like we've got a little bruising. There we go. And I'm going to just kind of slice it up nice and small and fine, so that your fried rice, I don't want to have super big chunks of onions in it, but just nice smaller bits that kind of are around the same, just around like the same texture and size as the onion or of the rice, so that it all kind of blends well together. So we'll do a little mincy over here. I'm going to save this little part of my onion because I think we'll be good with this one, because I'm doing a smaller batch. I actually have a small crew tonight, which doesn't happen often, but is quite lovely. So I'm not making as much food as I normally make. We're going to add in I'm going to start with like 2 teaspoons of olive oil over here. We'll throw in a little bit of butter later, because I feel like fried rice needs a little bit of butter just to get that lovely flavor. But we're going to saute our veggies up in oil first. So we're going to add in part of our minced up onion. Let me give it a quick stir. and just coat these onions. And then I'm going to cook these over a 4 on here. Cook them a little bit lower than you would with a non-stick pan because metal conducts that heat a lot higher and a lot faster. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse so that our cookies don't get any onion flavor on them. There we go. And then we're going to cut up and bake up our Aunt Aggie's because whenever I have like an Asian dish, I always just want something sweet afterwards. And these are a family favorite. I make them in big batches, and then I keep them in the freezer until we are ready to bake them up. And you just bake them at 350 for about 8 minutes, and they are wonderful. So we made these a couple weeks ago. They like last forever in the freezer. We did nice, fun fall colors for it. I do believe I have this recipe card out for everybody. I sent it out in the spring, as well as several videos on how to make it because we've made this one live before several times. But it is a perfect cookie to keep in your freezer. So whenever you want to have a batch of freshly baked cookies, you can plop it out and you bake it up. And 8 minutes later, you'll be eating the perfect mixture between a sugar and a butter cookie. They're not overly sweet, but they've got more sweetness than like a shortbread or a butter cookie. But they've got the texture of that kind of a butter cookie, but a little bit more sweetness like a sugar cookie. And they're also just really fun to dye up with different colors. They get a little bit bigger when you bake them, but they don't get a whole lot bigger. So you can actually bake up a huge amount at a time. And my kids love the dough too. This recipe has been around in my husband's family since the 1800s. So it is like 6 ingredients. It's such a simple recipe and it's so delicious. It is just like butter, egg yolks, baking soda, cream of tartar, sugar. And I'm pretty sure that's it. So it's and food coloring if you choose to dye it up. We do it for all the holidays, the kids' birthdays. They pick it out. If they have some special like event at school, I will dye them in their school colors. They're just a fun one. Okay. So get our batches out here. I'm going to actually rotate it down. And we've got a little bit more dough here. And then we can pop these in the oven. We'll flip our chicken because it's not quite there. I know when to flip my chicken over is when I'm starting to get this just very light golden edge on the frying part. That's when I know they're ready to flip. I think we can get one more edge in here. There we go. And the rest will be a little bit of dough to eat. But these are just so pretty, so delicious, and so simple.
And where can people find the recipe?
So on the link on our page, we have, you should be able to search and find our recipe cards. And this is one that we posted out back in the spring. So you might have to do some digging, as well as if you look for any video that says Aunt Aggie's on it. We will have made them live, and I always try to go through the exact measurements of when I'm making them. Now they are a cookie that when you make them, they have to sit in the freezer and chill for a couple of hours before you bake up. I'm going to put my timer on here for 8 minutes, and then we'll take them out. They cook very fast. You don't want to overcook them because then they get drier if you overcook them. So 8 minutes, and then you take them out and you let them sit. And I will say the optimal time to eat them is about 10 minutes after you bake them. They're warm and soft and delicious. They barely ever last the night in our house because they're so small and delicate that you can eat a whole bunch of them without feeling guilty. Let's turn this up just a smidge. Let me check my chicken here and see how it's looking. I'm going to let it cook for a little bit longer. It's got a little bit of goldenness on it, but not, I want just a smidge more. Now, because this is just a plain cornstarch and flour mixture, there's no sugar or any other spice in there to add it in color. It's going to have a pale fry on it. Cornstarch especially has a pretty pale fry on it. So don't try to cook it until it's a golden brown, because then you're just going to overcook it on there. So it will be just a pale color, but when you take it out and after it sits for a few minutes, it gets slightly darker in color once it's cooled. I'm going to prep my carrots for our fried rice. I'm just going to use 2 small carrots in here, really add a pop of color and a little bit of flavor, but not much. Sometimes I'll add in some like broccoli and whatnot to my fried rice, but I'm keeping it simple today, just to change it up a little bit. Now, I like to keep my carrots nice and small, so I'm going to cut these each in half so they're thinner on there. That way you'll have just little tender bits of carrots in your fried rice without having too big of chunks. There we go. And then you know what? I'm going to cut some of this one's a little bit bigger. And then we should be ready to flip our chicken over in just a second. And then we'll start juicing our oranges and our clementines to start making our marinade. Let me grab my spatula here. I'm starting to see these nice kind of golden edges here. So that's letting me know that it's ready to flip. Again, I'm not expecting a nice dark brown, but a really pale color because this is just cornstarch and flour. If there was paprika in it or onion powder, it would have a darker color to it. But being just flour and cornstarch, is going to have a much paler color. Here we go. We'll flip these guys over. Now, you could always do this in a deep fryer if you want to, but I find that this method, you don't have to use as much oil, so you're not wasting as much in here, and it's only, we're using 1 frying pan for the orange chicken part, so you're not also creating more dishes.
Question, do you primarily cook with just olive oil?
Yes, I really love the flavor of olive oil, and when I am frying, I do not fry over such a high heat that it requires like another oil that's more heat tolerant. I typically like to fry around 350. So it works well, and I love the flavor. But I feel like what olive oil you use is really a personal preference, you know. Although fries fried in beef tallow are delicious, as well as in peanut oil. But most of the time when I make fries, I make just my oven fries. Okay, we've got our onions. They're starting to caramelize and get a little bit crispy here, which is good because we can add in our carrots in just a second. We'll add in a little bit of garlic as well before we do the carrots. So let me grab. We're going to add in like a teaspoon of garlic. It's just a little side piece. It's not a big flavor component in the fried rice, but it is nice. So garlic works well for this. So just about a teaspoon. And then just be careful when you're sauteing up your garlic because it doesn't take long for it to burn. Smells wonderful though. There we go. I feel like cooking onions and garlic always makes your house smell like $1 million. It's just such a wonderful scent. My kids will always be like, "Oh, what are you cooking? It smells so good." And I'm like, just garlic and onions right now. But it does smell well. Okay, let's add in our measly amount of carrots today. I think this will make my kids happy. When I always tend to chalk my fried rice in with a lot more vegetables. But today I was like, oh, we'll skimp and make them happier. My husband is very happy here because he doesn't have to try to avoid the vegetables as if they're landmines in his fried rice. The things I make him do. It's a hard life for him, guys. Here we go. I made him eat salmon last night, which he said he liked after he ate it. I just think he likes to complain. Okay, let's check these. Now that my oil is pretty consistent and hot, the second side is going to cook up a lot faster than the first side. So these are looking pretty good. So I'm going to take this batch out here and I'm going to lay them on my paper towel. This is going to soak up any of this extra oil and allow it to get nice and crispy. Just like you would with bacon. You know how you put them on a paper towel. You can do it on like a cookie cooling rack if you want to. But I feel like the paper towel absorbs it a little bit better. Just going to use my tongs here and we'll take it out. As they cool, they will get, again, slightly darker in color, but these aren't going to get a really dark color. And that's because it is just flour and cornstarch. There's no added spice to add a bit more color. But they'll be nice and crispy. Here we go. Perfect. Flip those. And then let me give this a quick stir. I'm going to turn this down to about a 3. And then we'll throw in our eggs in just a second. But I want to give it a stir before we get going. Now let's get our next set of chicken in here. Now I have my tongs, so it won't be quite as messy as it was the first round. I'm going to give everything a quick toss because, again, I don't want to have any like pasty pieces. And I'm hoping I should be able to get all of this chicken in this second batch so we don't have to do 3 batches of chicken.
2 questions. How much cornstarch to flour and what seasonings are there?
So the cornstarch to flour, I used 1.5 cups of flour to 3/4 cup of cornstarch in there. So it's kind of like a 2-to-1 ratio of the flour to the cornstarch. And then that's all there is in here because this is going to be coated in a sauce. So you don't need to add any more spices because that sauce is going to have soy sauce in it, orange juice, brown sugar, garlic, ginger. That's where all that seasoning and flavor comes in. And if you have the meat and the chicken like breading on top of it, it can be too much flavor on there. It can get a little overpowering. Okay, we're going to grab our chickens here. It looks like I'm going to have to do 3 batches anyways. So I've got these. And then we'll go grab our cookies out because they're calling us. I'm going to just slide this down to really low into the side because I don't want it to crisp up anymore until we get back. And our cookies. These are cookies you do not want to overbake. So when that timer goes off, you want to get them out because, again, you want them to be soft, but they are gorgeous looking. So they puff up, but as they cool down, they'll sink down some. But these are our Aunt Aggie's. Again, they are like a happy mixture between a butter cookie and a sugar cookie. So not as sweet as a sugar cookie, but has the great texture of a butter cookie. These are a family favorite. Do not try to transfer them off your baking sheet for at least 5 minutes because they continue to set as they are on the baking sheet and firm up some. So make sure you leave them there. The optimal time to eat them is between 5 and 10 minutes after they've started baking. And I will tell my husband right now, do not take a cookie yet. You will burn yourself. He always needs to be reminded as if he's one of our toddlers.
You have a question? Have you ever made homemade egg rolls?
I have made egg rolls a couple of times. I love egg rolls, but none of my kids like them. My husband, he doesn't mind egg rolls, which I think they're all just crazy because I love it. But I think it's because there's a lot of cabbage in them and they're not as, big on cabbage like me. I love cabbage, braised cabbage rolls. The other day I made galumki. So good. Made galumki, which my husband was like, oh, galumki. And then he ate 4 of them. That's because they were good. Okay, we're going to add in a little bit of butter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push all of my sauteed veggies over to one side. That way we can cook our eggs on this side and then we'll mix them all together. I find if you try to throw your eggs in with the veggies, they get a weird texture. So let's let this, I've got it cooking kind of low, but I want to make sure this butter melts over to create as non-stick of surface as possible. And then we're going to fry or crack in our eggs here. So again, we're making a pretty good ratio of eggs because we only have one package of rice, but it's going to be delicious. I'm going to crack them in and then we'll scramble them and then we'll let them kind of set for it. But you don't need to scramble them beforehand and then add them in. You'll have plenty of time to do it in the pan.
You have a question? How did you learn how to cook?
Years of practice. I started cooking for my family growing up when I was 13 years old. I started taking over a meal a night, and then it took to 2 meals and then 3 meals, and I will say it was the best paying chore in my house. You got so we got paid to do it, and so I took over more. And I say it was the best because one, I love cooking. Two, I got to do the grocery shopping and pick out all the groceries, which means we always ate what I wanted to eat. So I had control. And growing up in a big family, that means I got to eat what I like every night. So it was a win. And it was, out of all the chores, it was the best paying one. So I don't know why my siblings didn't like it, but I'm happy about it.
Getting up at 4 for bread was pretty rough.
Well, that was my choice. So I used to get up because my mom loved homemade bread, and we had this little bread maker. So I would set my alarm, and this is when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old. I was really young. I was in middle school, but I would set the alarm. So I wake up at 3 in the morning. So, because the bread maker took 3.5 hours for it. So I could put the ingredients in. It took me like 5-10 minutes. And then I would go back to sleep so that my mom would wake up surprised to homemade bread, because I didn't do it all the time. It was, maybe once a month I would do it, but it was always if I knew she'd had like a hard time or whatnot, I would do that at the night before so she could wake up to homemade bread in the morning. It was just something I like to do.
Question: do all your siblings cook as well as you?
No. Maybe that's why I was the one who cooked every single night, because I think my sister had one meal she made, and we had that every week, and my brother had one, and there was not. No, I will say I'm probably the best chef out of my family. Now, my brother-in-law, who he's, like a decade or so older than me, but I grew up with him, and he was kind of got me into the love of cooking because he's a really fantastic chef and is amazing. But he's really good. So I feel like he rivals me as well. I learned a lot from him. I'm going to flip our chicken over, but he was the one who would get all the fancy ingredients and do all these crazy techniques like sous vide. He would make like a molten lava chocolate souffles for us, but all these like crazy dishes he would try and cook. And he got me interested in the Fine Cooking magazine and the Gourmet magazine. So then I asked for my parents to just subscribe to that as a kid so I could get those magazines and go to Williams and Sonoma, which was, now it's the really bougie place, but back then that was like the bougie, cool kitchen stuff. You could still afford that stuff now, maybe not so much. But I really love that. And I will say my parents were really great in the fact that they fostered my love of cooking. So they would like take me to Whole Foods where I could get some really cool ingredients and, buy me like Le Creuset pots and whatnot. I always said in college, I had like an illegal kitchen in my dorm room. I had like a toaster oven big enough that I could roast a chicken in it. I had a hot plate, which was not allowed, as well as all blender, all these things. So I would like be cooking meals in my dorm room at college with my friends. And I remember the RA would be like, "Sure does smell good in there." And I'm like, "It's takeout. But yes, I had that. My mom got me a KitchenAid mixer in college. I was crazy. I was probably the only college student with a KitchenAid mixer in their dorm room, but I had one because I like to cook. So I've had a passion for it for a really long time. Okay, we're gonna let those eggs, we've got them kind of scrambling here. And once they've all firmed up, then I'll mix those veggies in. It's okay if like a few get in there, but again, we don't want them all in there because I find that it gives them more of a you don't get any of those nice chunks of eggs, which my kids really like. while we're waiting for this to get up, let's get our oranges squeezed. Again, I've got 3 blood oranges, and I'm aiming for about 1.5 cups of fresh orange juice for this. So if I can't get it with the blood oranges, I'm going to get it with some clementines. But again, I feel like this is going to make it a very Halloween-esque orange chicken because the blood orange, which has very similar flavor to the or like a regular orange. It's just cooler. I always love I will like surprise my son because I'll pack his lunch and occasionally I'll put like a blood orange in there. And the first time I did it, he was like too scared to eat it. He was like, "There's something wrong with that orange." He's like, I was starting to eat it and he was like, it was like so red. And I was like, "It's a blood orange." He's like, "I've never heard of that." So I always like to surprise him every now and then. I mean, you won't know until he starts to peel it. And then if you try to peel a blood orange, it really just gets all over your hands. Here we go. First one down. Here we go. But hence, it does look pretty cool. And then I'm going to stir that stuff in just a second. I'm going to get this one squeezed. And I like to use the pulp and everything in mine, so don't feel the need to strain it. Now, you can use orange juice if you want to. Makes it a little bit easier. But freshly squeezed, I think just has a slightly better flavor. Okay, we've got our eggs cooking here for our fried rice on here. And then I'm going to mix in my carrots here in just a second. But again, I want the eggs to be fully cooked before we do that. Looks like our chicken, our second round of our chicken is done. So I'm going to take this out and then we'll work on squeezing the rest of our oranges.
Question: what do blood oranges taste like?
They taste honestly just like a regular orange. You just get the added benefit of them being a really cool color. But they taste like a citrus flavor. They're maybe a tiny bit. Let me see. I'll have to taste one in a second. I feel like they're the same, but I would have to actually like taste them together to really distinguish the flavors of them. But they're just a lovely citrus fruit that adds a nice pop of color. I feel like it's the difference of using a purple carrot versus an orange carrot. Not that much of a difference. Okay. Get these. And then we're going to add in our last bunch of chicken. Again, they're going to be a paler color because of that cornstarch. But if you've noticed, after they've sat for a little bit, they do get a little bit darker. Not terribly darker, but they're not quite as pale as when you first take them out. And that's kind of the cornstarch of it kind of settling here. Okay, let's get this last batch of chicken in. And then I think our eggs are going to be ready for us to get ready for our fried rice part, adding in the rice and our little seasonings. There we go. And I always keep my chicken in this cornstarch and flour mixture until it's ready to go in because I don't want it to get pasty. Thank you. There we go. And this was just, I would say it really grows in size, but this was just 3 chicken breasts. And it's going to get me a lot of chicken, it's nice because coating it really makes it get a lot bigger. Okay, let's mix in our carrots and our sauteed onions here. And, overboard. Throw those back in. And then we're going to add in our rice. And then we're going to add in our secret ingredient, which isn't a secret because I'm going to tell you, but it makes the best fried rice. So I've got a bag of, this is just frozen sticky rice that I have de-thawed. So it's like room temperature now. You can get it in the freezer section. It's the best rice. It's better than trying to cook rice at home, unless you have one of those bougie rice cookers. It just works so well. We're going to break it up, and then I'm going to squeeze a little bit of Japanese soy sauce over my rice mixture. That is what's going to give you that slightly sweet but savory flavor that fried rice when you go to like a hibachi place has. That's where you're going to get the flavor. I'm going to turn this down because it looks like I must have bumped it when I was by it. But I had it up on an, I don't know how, but I had it up on an 8. But let me check to see if it needs to be flipped. Yeah, let's get it there. I must have hit it while I walked by, but luckily I caught it before it got too toasty.
I have a question. What's some go-to recipes for quinoa?
So I love a quinoa stuffed pepper. So you can do like a Mexican stuffed pepper or like a Italian stuffed pepper where you use quinoa instead of rice. It's one of my favorite dishes to do. I also like to do these kind of what I call like these great grain bowls that uses quinoa, and then I'll saute up chicken. I'll add a little bit of pesto, caramelized onions, and mushrooms. One of my favorite ways to have quinoa for it. Okay, luckily we caught these, but I must have just tapped my thing, but they did not thankfully get burned on here. And we're going to just move in there, but I'm going to bring it, I have it down at a 3 now. Must have just slid past it. Okay, let's squeeze this orange, and then we're going to throw in some of our Japanese barbecue sauce. And we'll get this one squeezed here. And then I'm going to use a couple of my clementines just to make sure I have enough, because if you don't have enough juice, you're not going to get a lot of sauce, and you want a lot of sauce to really kind of coat your chicken. Let me wash my hands real quick. Just a quick rinse to get a little bit of that juice off. This is what's going to give you the best fried rice. It's super simple. You don't have to worry about mixing, soy sauce with brown sugar or anything to get you that sweet savory thing. I have it. I go through a lot of this because I also use this in a couple other recipes, but it is so good. So we're just going to squeeze about a tablespoon or so over our rice, and then I'm going to mix it in. I always start with a little bit, and then I'll taste it as we go to see if we need to add any more. This is going to give you the savory and a little bit of that sweet flavor to it. There we go. I'm just kind of breaking up some of those clumps. Make sure your rice is on nice and low because you don't want it to stick to your pan. Here we go. And then we're going to add in a little bit of green onions towards the end, and just a teensy bit of garlic salt. Here we go. But this makes the best fried rice.
Can you go over what the sauce is again and where did you find it?
So this is Japanese barbecue sauce. Do not think barbecue. Think of a sweet soy sauce. And it is delicious. You can get that from the grocery store. I've gotten it from Publix, Kroger's, Target has it, Costco, where you get the really big ones from Costco. So you can get it pretty much everywhere. It's pretty mainstream. You can even get it on Amazon. And it is honestly like a game changer. It's really great on skirt steak, flank steak. Delicious. My fried rice, I use it a little bit in my Mongolian beef recipe, as well as when I make like homemade lo mein, I'll use some in that as well. So it takes the work out of having to create your own kind of slight, because soy sauce is very salty on its own, and you kind of need to cut it with a little bit of vinegar and sugar to kind of cut down on that saltiness. And the Japanese barbecue sauce does that for you. Here we go. Let's get our chicken out. And then we're going to just take a little bit of this oil out. I'm losing it. I should have gotten a bigger plate here. It's crazy. This is just 3 chicken breasts. Just how much chicken you can get out of 3 chicken breasts. There we go. And I want to make sure I get all of this out, even though we're going to be throwing this all back in here. And you know what? I don't actually think I need to take out too much oil because we're going to fry it in here. But I'm just going to take I've got this down. I'm going to turn it down to low for right now. And I'm just going to take a paper towel and just dab a little bit of oil out because you don't want too much oil in there or it's going to get pretty greasy, but you need a little bit of oil to mix with your sauce. So
Question, do you know what stream schedule you're doing tomorrow?
I think tomorrow we are going to do our hope is a morning and a lunchtime stream tomorrow. We've got a soccer game that we're going to, and then we're going to be going out for dinner. So that's our kind of our plan. So like 10:30 breakfast and maybe like 2 o'clock lunch, kind of the way we are because we're kind of later people. But my 10-year-old daughter is joining the Vanderbilt College soccer team. Their team to go out on the field and do like the tunnel cheer. You know how they go with the players to kind of get them all excited for it. So she's very excited for that. Okay, we've got our oil here. I'm going to turn now up to a 2. We're going to add in about a tablespoon and a half of garlic. So just kind of put it in here. We're going to let that saute up. And we're going to add in about a tablespoon and a half of ginger paste. Give or take. We're going to let this saute for just a second. Really bring out those flavors. Keep your temperature down nice and low. And again, those little bits that have fallen off of the chicken as we sauteed it is going to help thicken up this sauce. I'm going to cut these last 3 ones so we can squeeze it in here. So we can add those in here. These are clementines. Now, these are a bit sweeter than oranges, but we're going to be adding some vinegar on here, which will add, again, bring away a little bit, sweetness. But we're also going to be using brown sugar to help with it. And that's going to help give us a nice kind of caramely sauce. These are very juicy. So we're going to add this in. We've got our ginger and our garlic kind of caramelizing up in that oil, which will add just a great flavor. Here we go. And then we've got our blood orange and our regular clementine juice here. I'm just going to pull it through. This is just to see if I get any seeds out of here because some of the seeds kind of fell in. But you can put the pulp in and everything. But here, it's the same thing as if you're doing a mesh. But look, I just got out most of my seeds and a little bit of that pulp. We're going to mix this in. Beautiful. And then we're going to add in about 3 tablespoons of soy sauce and then some vinegar as well. So I'm going to kind of eyeball this. That was 1, 2, 3. And then for our vinegar, we're going to add in about a tablespoon and a half, which is going to be about 4 capfuls. This is going to give you a lovely tangy flavor to it that you kind of get with your Asian dishes that is just lovely. And then we're going to add in some brown sugar here in just a second. But I'm going to give this a nice stir. And I'm going to bring it up to about a 3 because as it cooks, it's going to thicken. Let's give our rice a quick stir here. Again, we have it nice and slow on there. We're going to get ready to add in some green onions to this, and then we're almost going to be ready to serve up here. Okay. 4, we've got our ginger in here, our garlic in here. Now we're going to add in our brown sugar. We need about 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. So I'm just going to eyeball it. That's going to be just shy of a 1/4 of a cup. A little bit more. And this is going to make that sweet, sticky sauce that is going to stick to our chicken. And then I need to add just a smidge of water. Here we go. Let me grab my little container here. We're going to add in about 1/4 cup of water. And then we're just going to mix it. As you can see, we've kind of got a sticky type sauce here, but as it cooks, it's going to continue to get nice and sticky. You can see we've got a couple chunks of our little bits from our chicken from before, but that will add great flavor. Here we go. And now let's get our green onions chopped up. We're going to add some in here as well as into our fried rice. And then we are going to be about ready to serve up dinner. And our cookies should be nice and cooled and be ready to eat as well. Okay. So we're going to add in our green onions. We're going to do a little in both. I'm going to add my whiter ones more to my sauce because they're going to cook a little bit more than the ones that are going into my fried rice. So I'm going to use the little darker green ones in the fried rice. Here we go. And you could also throw in some sesame seeds if you wanted to, but I find green onions work just great. So we'll mix those in just a second. And that was just 4 green onions, but we're going to add these in here. And that will add a nice little savory note as well. Okay, let's get our chicken in here. Let's get this up to a quick boil, and then we'll pop that chicken in. I'm going to take a quick taste of it first, just to make sure we don't need to add anything else. Perfect. We've got that nice tangy from the orange and the vinegar, but that sweetness as well, and that kind of saltiness from the soy sauce. Let's mix in our green onions into our fried rice. So we have, again, just a really basic fried rice. I'm going to do a quick little taste here, make sure we don't need to add any salt. We'll add a pinch of garlic salt. Let me grab it over here. Like, I want to say maybe a 1/2 teaspoon, a nice little sprinkle over it. I like to do both the Japanese barbecue sauce and the garlic salt because that gets you kind of 2 different salty notes to it. There we go. I'm going to turn that off. It's done. We've got this to a nice boil, which has thickened it up. So I'm going to turn this off as well. And we're going to toss in our chicken now and get it nice and coated up. Let's see. Might just be easier if I do it with my hands. And you just want to coat it up with this sauce. And this will also thicken up the sauce as well because it will mix it with kind of coat it there.
Question. If you want to add peas to the rice, would you use frozen peas?
You would use frozen peas that you have de-thawed. So you don't want to put them in right when they're frozen because then they get wrinkly and can get a little pasty. But just kind of de-thaw them in a little bit of water and get like the petite green peas. Those will be lovely. I love peas in my fried rice. Nobody in my family shares my love of peas, but I love peas. Nice pea risotto, delicious. Here we go. Let's coat up. We've got our nice sauce. As you can see, it is clinging onto our chicken here. And then we're going to be ready to serve up. Here we go. Beautiful. You see how we have just enough sauce to kind of coat it up, which is what you want. If you have any less, then you're not going to get this great orange flavor on every bite. But let's get served up, and then I'm going to turn this off. Let me wash my hands, and we can eat. Let me grab. Okay. I'm going to slide this guy over here so we can be by our cookies. And I am surprised The cameraman didn't eat any cookies yet. Okay, let's slide this over here. And we're gonna serve up. So tonight for dinner, we have our fried rice that we made using Japanese barbecue sauce. We've got 6 whole eggs in here, some frozen sticky rice, caramelized onions, green onions, and carrots. And we are going to top our fried rice with our blood orange chicken. So we made a lovely, we fried our chicken up with this cornstarch and flour mixture. And then we made a lovely orange sauce using blood oranges, some clementines, vinegar, brown sugar, and ginger and garlic. And it's just wonderful, sweet, tangy. And then for dessert, we have our beautiful Aunt Aggie's cookies, which are like a mix between a butter cookie and a sugar cookie. We did them in nice, fun fall colors here, but they are a favorite. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page. So if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we made, and you can always watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my all-clad pans in there, my hex-clad pans, my knives, my cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.